History Secrets.
To understand what may happen in the coming years, some analysts begin by observing a recurring pattern in history: the cycle of rise, decline, and collapse of societies. These three stages appear repeatedly throughout human history. Empires emerge, grow rapidly, stabilize for a period, and eventually enter decline. But it is important to understand that decline does not necessarily mean everything immediately gets worse. Decline often simply means that progress slows down, things stop improving, and begin to stagnate. Collapse, however, is different. Collapse occurs when a society rapidly loses its stability. Institutions stop functioning, conflicts intensify, and social order begins to disintegrate. Each of these phases has specific characteristics. During the phase of rise, societies tend to be open. Openness means something simple: opportunity. Poor people can become wealthy. Talent is valued. Innovation is encouraged. Criticism is seen as useful. In rising societies, public debate is encouraged. New ideas are discussed. Mistakes are corrected quickly. This collective energy drives economic and cultural growth, though. Interestingly, this phenomenon does not necessarily depend on the political system. Different regimes can go through phases of openness when they are in a phase of rise. In the mid-20th century, for example, both the United States and China experienced periods of great social mobilization. Both sought to build strong and innovative societies. But as time passes, changes begin to occur. When societies enter the phase of decline, bureaucratic structures tend to grow. Bureaucracy emerges when institutions try to preserve stability. Officials begin to create increasingly detailed rules. Administrative processes become more complex. Organizations begin to focus more on maintaining the existing system than on innovating. At this stage, the priority is no longer progress. The priority becomes stability, keeping everything functioning exactly as it is. But when decline deepens, something else happens. Society may enter an authoritarian phase. At this stage, power no longer depends on consent and begins to depend on force. To illustrate this difference, imagine 3 ways of making a simple decision: choosing where to have lunch. In the phase of rise, everyone discusses, debates options, and decides together through consensus or voting. In the phase of decline, the process changes. The decision still appears voluntary, but someone manipulates information to influence the outcomes, perhaps by promising advantages that do not exist. In the phase of collapse, there is no longer negotiation. Someone simply imposes the decision, and those who disobey face punishment. This model can be summarized in 3 words: consent, deception, coercion. Another important aspect involves social relationships. During the phase of rise, people feel that they are part of a collective project. There is empathy. There is cooperation. There is trust. In the phase of decline, the focus changes. Now the priority is to maintain the status quo, to avoid changes that could threaten the system. In collapse, the dominant instinct becomes survival. Individuals and groups begin to act in self-defense, even if that means direct conflict with others. Another interesting detail involves the pace of these transformations. Rise tends to be fast. Decline tends to be slow. But collapse can occur suddenly. Many people believe that a society in decline will continue to exist indefinitely. But history shows something different. Collapses usually occur when multiple crises arise at the same time. Wars, economic crises, environmental disasters, pandemics. Individually, these crises can be managed, but when several occur simultaneously, the system can become overwhelmed. This phenomenon is often called a perfect storm. Societies usually prepare for specific problems. A plan to deal with war, another to deal with epidemics, another to deal with economic crises. But they are rarely prepared to face all of these problems at the same time. When that happens, institutions can fail rapidly. There is another important factor: the capacity for internal criticism. During the phase of rise, people who criticize the system are valued. They help correct errors. But in more advanced stages of decline, criticism may be seen as a threat. Those who point out problems begin to be treated as enemies. This creates a paradox. The more a system needs criticism to adapt, the less it tolerates that criticism. As a result, societies may lose the ability to prepare for future threats. Problems accumulate, and when crises arise, it is already too late to react. Based on this historical model, some analysts try to make predictions about the future, especially for the Western world. One of the most discussed predictions involves the weakening of democratic freedoms. As systems enter phases of decline, governments may adopt more authoritarian measures. Another prediction involves economic difficulties. When citizens lose confidence in the system, motivation to work and invest may decrease. This reduces economic growth. Another possible phenomenon is the increase in migratory flows. Governments may resort to immigration to compensate for labor shortages. But rapid demographic changes can also generate social tensions, especially when local populations feel that their cultural identity is threatened. These tensions can evolve into internal conflicts, protests, political violence, deep ideological divisions. Finally, some analysts believe that governments may resort to external conflicts to deal with internal crises. Wars can serve as a way to mobilize the population or redirect social tensions. This does not necessarily mean that these predictions will come true. They represent only hypotheses based on historical patterns. Analytical models are tools. They help interpret trends, but the future is never completely predictable. If these predictions are confirmed in the next 5 or 10 years, the model will gain credibility. Otherwise, it will need to be revised. This is the true objective of any historical theory. Not to impose certainties, but to offer frameworks that help us understand how power and societies evolve over time. If we accept this model of rise, decline, and collapse, then the central question arises: what does this mean for the current world, and especially for the next 5 to 10 years? According to this interpretation, many Western societies may be entering an advanced phase of decline. This does not necessarily mean that everything is collapsing immediately, but it indicates that certain structural signs are beginning to appear. The first sign involves political freedom. In young and rising societies, freedom of expression is usually broad. Public debate is encouraged. Criticism helps improve the system. But as institutions age and become more rigid, the space for criticism may shrink. Governments begin to see opponents as threats. Political control measures begin to expand. This can lead to the gradual weakening of democracy. Emergency laws, greater use of security forces, restrictions on certain types of speech. According to this analysis, this phenomenon can already be observed in various parts of the world. not only in traditional authoritarian regimes, but also in consolidated democracies. The second prediction involves the economy. When social trust declines, collective motivation also declines. People begin to feel that the system does not work for them. If citizens believe that effort will not be rewarded fairly, productivity may fall, investments decrease, innovation slows down. This can generate periods of economic stagnation, or even deeper crises. The third possible consequence involves immigration. Governments may try to compensate for demographic decline or labor shortages by bringing in foreign workers. From an economic point of view, this may seem like a practical solution. But rapid demographic changes can also generate cultural and political tensions. Local populations may feel that their identity is being replaced, and social conflicts may arise from this perception. This leads us to the fourth prediction: internal conflicts. When inequality, cultural tensions, and political polarization combine, societies may face episodes of civil violence. These conflicts do not always take the form of open wars. They may appear as violent protests, conflicts between ideological groups, or isolated episodes of political violence. But even fragmented conflicts can erode social stability, especially when institutions lose legitimacy. The fifth prediction involves external conflicts. Historically, governments facing internal crises sometimes resort to external wars. Wars can mobilize patriotism, they can redirect internal frustrations, and they can temporarily strengthen governments. During wars, populations often accept restrictions that they would normally reject: economic controls, emergency laws, expansion of executive power. For this reason, some analysts believe that international conflicts may become more frequent during periods of internal instability. It is important to remember that these predictions do not describe a fixed sequence. These phenomena may occur simultaneously, or in different orders. Political freedom may decline at the same time that economic crises arise. Immigration may increase while social tensions intensify, and external conflicts may appear amid internal crises. This type of combination creates highly unstable environments in which political decisions become increasingly difficult. Even so, this model is not intended to be an inevitable prophecy. It is merely an analytical tool, a way of interpreting historical patterns. If the coming decades follow this pattern, the model will have demonstrated some usefulness. If events take a different path, it will need to be revised. That is the nature of any theory about history. It tries to identify patterns, but it must always remain open to revision. Because the future rarely follows exactly the script we expect. Unexpected technological changes can alter historical trajectories. New leadership can transform political systems. Crises can generate profound reforms. Human history is full of surprises. Empires once considered invincible have disappeared. Societies once considered fragile have become powerful. Therefore, understanding the mechanisms of rise and decline does not mean accepting fatalism. It simply means trying to better understand the forces that shape the world. If we can understand these forces, perhaps we can act more consciously. Perhaps we can avoid certain mistakes of the past. And perhaps we can build more balanced systems in the future. Because in the end, theories about power and history are not just intellectual exercises. They are attempts to answer an essential question: how can human societies survive and prosper over time? And this remains one of the most important questions of our time. The story that opens this reflection begins with a seemingly extraordinary character, a man named Johnny King. According to the account presented, he embodies all the qualities that elite institutions tend to admire: military discipline, academic excellence, professional ambition. He is said to have served in special forces, enrolled in one of the top medical schools, and pursued a career in highly prestigious scientific institutions. An almost perfect resume. But behind this trajectory, there is a disturbing detail. A deep trauma experienced in childhood. An episode of violence that is said to have marked his life forever. According to this interpretation, this trauma may have transformed into psychological fuel, a force that drove extraordinary achievement, but also left deep marks on his personality. This example is used to raise a broader question. What kind of people does the elite educational system actually produce? Institutions such as Harvard, Yale, or Princeton are often seen as centers of intellectual excellence, places where the brightest minds are formed. But some critics argue that these institutions do not just educate, they also shape specific behaviors. According to this view, the modern meritocratic system creates very particular incentives. From an early age, students learn that the most important thing is not to learn. It is to win. Grades become the primary metric of value. Results replace intellectual curiosity. Competition replaces collaboration. In this environment, failure is no longer seen as a natural part of learning. It becomes a threat, something that must be avoided at all costs. But there is a paradox in this. Historically, many of the greatest learnings come precisely from failure. Failure forces reflection. Reflection generates learning. This process strengthens resilience, and resilience is one of the foundations of personal development. Before the modern meritocratic culture, many people intuitively understood this cycle. Fail, reflect, learn, grow. However, in highly competitive systems, failure can become forbidden. A mistake can damage academic averages. It can affect university admissions. It can compromise future careers. As a result, students begin to avoid intellectual risks. Exploration and curiosity are replaced by performance strategies. Another effect mentioned by critics involves the loss of time for reflection. Many young people live extremely structured schedules. School, assignments, extracurricular activities, exam preparation. Every minute is planned. Little space remains to think freely, to question, to explore ideas without immediate purpose. Without this mental space, the capacity for deep reflection may weaken, and without reflection, it becomes difficult to develop resilience. According to this critique, the meritocratic system may produce highly efficient individuals, but it does not always produce independent thinkers. For people who already belong to wealthy or influential families, this system may work well. It prepares these individuals to manage power. But for individuals from more modest backgrounds, the experience may be different. The pressure for immediate success can generate intense frustration, especially when expectations are unrealistic. In some cases, this can lead to deep personal crises, feelings of failure, loss of purpose, or depression. In the account presented, the narrator himself describes having gone through this kind of crisis. After graduating from an elite institution, he faced years of personal difficulties. He describes a period marked by professional frustrations, isolation, and deep questioning about the meaning of success. According to this reflection, True learning only began after that period, when he began to value three fundamental principles. First, keeping an open mind, recognizing that there is always more to learn. Second, accepting failure as an essential part of growth. Mistakes are not signs of incapacity. They are opportunities for learning. Third, developing resilience, the ability to keep trying despite difficulties. These three elements form a powerful cycle. Failure leads to reflection. Reflection strengthens resilience. Resilience enables growth. Over time, this process can reveal genuine talents, real passions, and more authentic life paths. This perspective also raises another important question. What does success really mean? For many modern educational systems, success means status, wealth, institutional prestige. But other cultural traditions define success differently, as personal development, social contribution, or fulfillment of purpose. These two views can come into conflict, especially in highly competitive environments. Some psychologists describe two fundamental modes of human functioning: the utilitarian mode and the altruistic mode. The utilitarian mode is driven by rewards, measurable results, competition. The altruistic mode is associated with human connection, cooperation, creativity, and collective purpose. According to this interpretation, these two modes do not always coexist easily. Highly competitive environments tend to activate the utilitarian mode, while collaborative environments favor creativity and innovation. This tension often appears in elite educational systems. Students are encouraged to demonstrate passion and idealism, but at the same time must compete fiercely for recognition. This contradiction can generate a type of psychological conflict, in which individuals feel that they need to play different roles at the same time. According to the critique presented, this dynamic turns many students into excellent social performers, people capable of adapting their speech and behavior according to the environment. But this constant adaptation raises another question. To what extent do these identities reflect genuine convictions? Or to what extent are they merely survival strategies within highly competitive systems? Answering this question requires something that no educational system can provide on its own: self-knowledge. In the end, institutions can offer tools, they can offer opportunities. But building a meaningful life depends on individual choices about values, purpose, and the way we decide to learn throughout life. Perhaps this is the true lesson of this story. The deepest learning rarely happens only within institution. It happens when we are able to reflect honestly on our own experiences and use those experiences to keep growing, even after the classroom ends. After presenting these criticisms of the elite educational system, the inevitable question arises: is there any way to escape this cycle? The proposed answer does not begin with immediate institutional reforms. It begins at the individual level, in the way each person chooses to learn. According to this reflection, the first step is to recognize the nature of the system, to understand that many educational environments prioritize performance and status more than deep learning. When this mechanism becomes visible, the individual can make a different choice: to pursue genuine learning instead of merely chasing credentials. This means valuing intellectual curiosity, asking questions, exploring ideas without the constant pressure of immediate results. It also means recovering something that many traditional cultures considered essential: time to think. Reflection requires mental space, and in modern societies, this space has often disappeared. Busy schedules, constant pressures, continuous evaluation. In this environment, deep thinking can become a rare luxury, but without reflection, true learning hardly happens. Another important change involves the relationship with failure. In highly competitive systems, failure may seem unacceptable. But outside these systems, failure often becomes one of the greatest teachers. Each mistake reveals limits. Each difficulty exposes something that still needs to be learned. When viewed this way, failure stops being a threat. It becomes a tool for growth. This shift in perspective requires something essential: intellectual humility. Recognizing that no one knows everything, that there are always new paths to explore, and new skills to develop. This attitude also favors something often associated with creativity: an open mind. People who are open to new ideas can connect different concepts, explore unknown territories, and find unexpected solutions. This type of mindset contrasts with environments that are excessively results-oriented, where the main focus is to meet specific goals. In these environments, experimentation may seem risky, but it is precisely experimentation that often leads to the most important discoveries. Another fundamental element in this process is resilience, the ability to keep moving forward despite difficulties. Resilience does not mean the absence of failure. It means learning from each failure and continuing to try. Over time, this combination of an open mind, reflection, and resilience can reveal something deeper: the discovery of a genuine passion. When a person finds something that truly motivates them, learning stops being an obligation. It becomes a natural process. Hours of practice no longer feel like sacrifice. Curiosity turns into creative energy. This type of learning rarely follows predictable paths. It can emerge at different moments in life, sometimes after years of trial and error. But when it emerges, it can completely redefine a person's path. This perspective also raises an important reflection about the concept of success. For a long time, success was associated with prestigious institutions, high-ranking positions, material wealth. But more and more people are beginning to question these definitions, asking whether success should also include other elements: intellectual autonomy, contribution to society, personal meaning. These questions do not have universal answers. Each society and each individual may interpret them differently. But they reveal something essential. The debate about education is not only technical, it is also philosophical. It involves values, expectations, and different visions about the purpose of human life. Perhaps that is why discussions about universities, meritocracy, and success evoke such intense emotions. They directly touch personal dreams. Dreams of social mobility, of recognition, of fulfillment. When these dreams clash with reality, frustrations may arise, but new questions may also emerge. Questions about what is truly worth learning, and about how each person can build their own path. In the end, No institution can fully define that path. Universities can offer opportunities. They can transmit knowledge. But the deepest learning depends on something that goes beyond any system. The ability to keep learning throughout life. And perhaps that is the true message behind this story. Education does not end with a diploma. It begins there, and continues, as long as there is curiosity, reflection, and the desire to grow. Many civilizations flourished before ours. Some dominated vast territories. Others disappeared almost without leaving traces. What remains are clues, scattered through time, silent monuments, fragmented manuscripts, stories passed down through generations. Each discovery brings us a little closer to the truth, but history still holds many secrets. Because some secrets of history are still waiting to be revealed.